Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Do and thank you for joining. Today I will talk with you about something more of a soft skill discussion. We won't do any coding, and I would like to share with you my experience around working as a data specialist with business stakeholders. They are different, the business stakeholders, than people who are specialized in data. There are different perspectives, different backgrounds, and all these differences make it sometimes challenging to find a common ground for a healthy discussion and fruitful one. So in this video, as I said, I will discuss some of my thoughts around this. I prepared a few slides and we'll walk through them together. As I said, we're talking about working with business stakeholders as a data specialist, and to that end, we think of it as different entities kind of coming from different places. I made the joke here that business is from Excel and data is from Jupyter, but it's of course just a joke. But I hope it demonstrates that the differences are there. And if you worked with business stakeholders as a data scientist or analyst or engineer, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Let's talk about the business stakeholder coming from the planet of Excel. What do we have here? The superpowers, I would say, of the business stakeholders are domain expertise. They know what they're doing in the sense of driving the business. They know what are the business processes involved in the business, in the working of the business. They are customer oriented. They know who are the customers, what the customers need. In many cases, I would say we as the data specialists are not so familiar with the customers. And they also have a strategic view on things. They don't look too often too deep into the details. They want to get the bigger picture, especially as you go up the chain to the managers, senior managers, and so on. But at the same time, they also have some serious limitations. So they sometimes lack tools. So normally they have Excels tightly attached to their belt. But that's a tool that, it is very powerful, but still, at the end of the day, limited. It also doesn't give them the freedom to access all the data they would like to access, right? So we're talking here about this kind of technical debt. They sometimes don't know well enough where to find the data, how to get it, how to aggregate it, how to summarize it, how to join it with other data sources. And this is where the data specialist can chip in and bring a lot of value, as long as he's being careful and attentive to the needs of the business stakeholder. And this is because he brings different strong points, superpowers. The data specialist has the data accessible. He can open databases, he can open different data lakes, connect different types of sources together, do sophisticated joinings and aggregations using different tools, whether it's Python and Pandas or PySpark or even just SQL. Many business stakeholders, they're not familiar with SQL, and this poses a limitation. Furthermore, in many cases, the data specialist has kind of a sound, I would call it academical background, right? Analytical skills, knows a little more what it means, what are the details of working with the data. But at the same time, he or she also has some shortcomings. The business understanding is sometimes limited. It happens rather often that the business kind of circulates the discussion among the business without taking carefully enough into account the data needs. So it ends up with the situation that the data specialist is not 100% familiar with the processes that happen in the business. And he has this kind of tunnel view where the business, I put it in here in brackets because it's like maybe it's because he doesn't see the business, or he sees the business but in a very narrow manner, the data specialist, right? So he needs the collaboration with the stakeholders. And not only that, I'm not touching it in this scope of this video. There's also a third pillar, the IT. Because when the business defines a business process, you want the process to be implemented. That's handled by the IT. The implementation generates data that the data team is supposed to work with and then feed it back to the business. And if they're not well aligned, all these three corners of this triangle of success, things can go a little south. But that's really high level, and I'm not going into the details here. I'm mostly focusing on the relation between the business side and the data. And what can you do to be a more, let's say, successful data specialist when working with the business stakeholders? I summarized here 4 points. You need to be attentive to the details. When you see something in the data that doesn't make sense, for example, I don't know, a registration date of a vehicle that dates to 1960 sharp, like January 1st, what does it mean? Why is it happening? It's very likely that there is some explanation for that, and you need to allow yourself the freedom, so to say, to be attentive to the details. Don't let yourself be distracted by the bigger picture, by the sense of urgency. The devil is in the details, but also keys to success. Then you need to explain what you're doing. Don't work under the assumption that you're doing fancy stuff that is very hard to explain and you don't want to go into the details with the business stakeholders. Explain what you're doing. Explain the way you think, and even explain how you actually do that, implement things. I think by doing that, you can identify what I call gold stakeholders that are not only business versed in the business domain, they're also keen on learning additional things like data skills. And then you can also enable them to become more savvy when it comes to the data analysis. And by doing that, you're giving them the rods and not just the fish, right? And lastly, be effective when you summarize. And here I want to say something funny maybe. So once you're done with the analysis and it's sound and you have very good foundations, but it's still a little bit difficult to explain, and I'm going back to the second point of explaining what you're doing, you can cheat sometimes. You can make dummy data, for example. You can do something that is kind of not the real story in terms of the data, but it's something that's easier to explain. So it's a summary, it's maybe just a dummy data that explains the way of thinking, and then it can bring everyone closer on the same page in the discussion. So these are the points and things I wanted to discuss with you. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. I'll be happy if you leave some comments and share some stories, how you deal with these situations, what were your challenges, what are your tips, and we can continue the discussion there. Also, if you found it interesting and you want to see more, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you soon. I'm Dr. Dro, and have a wonderful rest of the day.